Totally. So as I said, I'm Maggie Park. I am from the United States originally. I'm sorry I don't have an accent, but luckily these guys do. So you'll hear the British accent shortly. I'm from the United States, Pennsylvania originally. I'm also the daughter of a guidance counselor, so very brought up in this ilk of learning more about different places in the world. But I studied over here when I was a master. Well, I studied for a semester when I was an undergrad, loved it, came back for a master's, stayed for a PhD. 15 years on, I'm still here, and this is life now. So our topic today, we're gonna run through graduate studies in the UK. So a really general overview, just how does one do grad school in the UK? How does it work? Does it transfer back? What are the general costs? You know, all those questions that we get and those things that come up. And just to kind of give another option to students who this would be the answer for. I've said it before in other presentations, I was not ready for UK for undergrad because I was very undecided. I mean, I went in pre-med, I came out film. Some of us need liberal arts to figure a few things out. But sometimes you have that student who, you know, as a sophomore is like, I want ocean sciences. This is what I want to study. Great, come on in. You could be super focused in the UK, but sometimes you need the US liberal arts. But thank God I found this for grad school. So by the time I knew what I wanted to study and what I was absolutely obsessed with, there was this 1-year option where I could go live in Wales and study King Arthur. What? Like, that's a thing? And obviously you can do it in any discipline. So it was just phenomenal, and then stayed on for a 3-year PhD. So I'm going to run you through some really general overview stuff of Wales. If you've come to our webinars before, this will look familiar, but just want to make sure it's there for your general info. And then Pat and Kath will take you through some of the more detailed elements of postgraduate study. So this is where we are. This is Wales. We're the red bit there. The whole of the UK is about the size of New England. Wales is about the size of Vermont, if that helps you kind of contextualize this. I like to share that because I think everybody thinks the UK is just massive, but it's not. I live up in North Wales, the very tip of the red bit. That's like a little island there. I live up there. I'm about 3 hours on a direct train to London. So every Monday I teach it, well, in normal times, every Monday I teach a class in London. So I take the train down, teach, stick around for a few hours, grab a nice meal with a friend, pop back. I love that because I can get to the city quite easily. I can participate in all the things that London has to offer, but where I live is about 75% less expensive than London. And I have the ocean in my front yard and mountains in my backyard. So it's really well connected. South Wales is only about 2 hours to London. We're about 2-hour flight anywhere to mainland Europe. It's about a 7-hour flight back to the East Coast and about a 10-hour flight to the West Coast. Obviously, that'll depend where you are, which sounds a bit mad, but when you start doing it, it's not a big deal at all. And I think about it like I used to drive 6 hours from Pennsylvania to Virginia to go to university. And now I fly 7 hours, and I'm saving about, well, I was saving because I'm not a student anymore, about $35,000 a year. So it was okay. I could come to terms with that. So that's a general overview of where we are. This is Cardiff. This is our capital city. This is where Pat lives. We've got 3 universities in Cardiff, a couple more within an hour or so. It is a proper capital city, and it feels like it. Metropolitan, it's got the government hub, it's got a big BBC studios. It's on the bay, there's wonderful sports clubs, restaurants, shops, all those things you would expect from a capital city, but it's only 350,000 people. So it's super accessible, really walkable, really has that metropolitan feel. But again, it's about 40% cheaper than living in London. So you can have that kind of atmosphere and those opportunities. A lot of our students will work in internships and work placements and shadowing and things with these companies based in Cardiff and have that close one-to-one attention, you know, being able to work alongside a minister or something like that, excuse me, but also have the easy access to London should they want to get around a bit farther. This is what we're pretty much known for. There's a lot of castles in Wales. We have more castles per square mile than anywhere in Europe. There's 4 within about 15 minutes of me. This is one of them. Most of them will have a classroom in place, and sometimes the universities use these classrooms as well for the history of the archaeology students. If you're not that student, you can still go sit in the castle and do your reading, which is certainly what I did. It's just nice to know that these are around. It really makes you feel like you're having this amazing international experience. We also have 3 national parks that cover about a quarter of the country. So you're never far away from a national park. A lot of our students like to take the coastline challenge over the school holidays. They'll see how many of the 870 miles they can cover in a week or 2 weeks. And it's all open and wild and, you know, free for people to travel and very safe. I always look at this bit and I'm like, if this were in the US, there would definitely be like a hotel and a restaurant and a gift shop like right there, but it's just sheep and ponies for us. General overview, this is undergrad as well as postgrad, but just to kind of give you a general overview of our structure. We have 3 years for an undergrad degree, 1 year for a master's, and 3 years for a PhD. They're shorter because we don't do gen ed requirements. So for the master's, it's 1 year, it is 12 months. It's quite intense, but it is 12 months. Most of the time it's 9 months taught, 3 months independent research, depends on the degree that you're doing, which Kath will talk about shortly. But it is a bit more focused. There's not going to be a language requirement. There's not any kind of general core curriculum within the master's or the PhD. It's pretty much focused on research-based material and some taught elements. So because of that, we can cut out a fair bit of time, but it is completely equivalent to a US degree. I'm actually going to skip this one because this is more for undergrad as well. These are just a few of the differences that I think are key to point out. We do ask for a letter of recommendation or a letter of reference, depending on the wording used. And the main thing to know about this one is that it has to come from someone who can speak to the student's ability in that field. It's great if their neighbor knows them really well, or their employer knows them really well, or their pottery professor knows them really well. They can always send a secondary reference, but we need that primary reference to be from somebody in the field that can say, yes, they're going to be successful in biochemistry because I taught them in XYZ and they got this grade in ABC. So really making sure that we are confident in the aptitude of that student and that they're going to be successful when they come to Wales. Same with the personal statement, quite different from a US personal statement. Similar to, I think, a graduate school one from the US. It is more like a cover letter to a job application or a CV. We're looking for, why do you want to do this? Why is this program specifically interesting for you? Why do you think you're qualified for it? What preparation have you done? Any internships, experience, independent reading, journals, anything that you can kind of bring to our attention. Often this is accompanied by a CV as well. So you can include a CV in your application pack to make sure that we have all the information that we need to show that you are prepared and ready to do this. And just a couple notes on our universities. First of all, we have a lot of buildings that look like Hogwarts. So you will see some absolutely stunning properties. And they're set in really beautiful areas. So most of our campuses are on or very near the sea. We're all pretty close to national parks. Easy rail and train links, easy to get around the UK. We also are pretty set up similar to a US campus in terms of university structure. There's a lot of support, learning support, student support, international student support. We'll pick students up at the airport. We'll bring them back to the dorms. We'll run classes on how to open a bank account, how to get a job, how to get a doctor's appointment, like all that living abroad stuff that I think people can get quite overwhelmed by. It's the first time for them. It's not the first time for us. So your student, your applicant really just needs to focus on the location and the program. If they like those two things, it's free to apply. There's no GRE requirement. Get them to put in an application. Once accepted, we help them with everything else. We'll take them through the visa process. We'll take them through the travel arrangements. We'll help them with accommodation, finding something on or off campus. And we'll run all those things about how to live overseas. There's also tons of clubs and societies, so students can get involved in sports or volunteer activities, religious groups, anything like that. So it does have that core community, very similar to a US campus. And there's a lot of learning support as well, which I always try to flag up, because I think it's often something that people might even consider hiding in US applications. They don't necessarily declare a learning disability or anything on an application. It's the complete opposite for us. It has nothing to do with your admissions. We want it there so we can prepare for that student. The example I often use is there's a student at my old university now that's doing, well, he's just started his master's in music, but he came for his bachelor's in music, but he's blind. So he declared that on his application. We were able to get the software that he needs and uses, train the staff in how to do that, and change his visa so he could come early with his guide dog and learn how to get from his dorm to his classroom. So all of that was just to set him up that he'd be okay once he got here. None of it has anything to do with admissions. It's just, we're ready. Yeah, we can do this. No problem. We got you. So it's okay for a student to declare that or to ask for extra support when they're here. Accommodation is guaranteed for international students on most campuses. don't know why my picture got a little large here, but so be it. All of our accommodation on campus is single accommodation. So students will have their own bedroom and their own bathroom, and then they share kitchens with 6 or 7 other people. Some of our campuses don't have on-campus accommodation, but they do all have private offices that can help arrange off-campus accommodation or very close to campus. So that could be flats in town, that could be, you know, a building that's just for students, but there will always be some sort of service that can help students find trusted accommodation on or near campus. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can fix the ratio here. I might just do it like that. Is that clear to everybody? Does it take up most of the screen still and you can see the slides okay? Okay, we'll do it that way. And I will go back a slide or two and pass over to Kath.
Hi, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the detail of the types of programs that you could do at graduate study. If I can get the first slide, please, Maggie, or the next slide. So whether you've recently completed an undergraduate degree or many applicants to Welsh universities have an interest in a subject that they've been interested in for a long time, whether it's a career change, a promotion, you can very much specialise at postgrad study in the UK, and many of which either have taught programmes or research-based programmes. And you have the option to study full-time on campus in Wales, but many universities have been doing online and distance learning for many, many years. For us at our university, we're in our 30th year of doing it, so this past year hasn't been too different to us. There are 2 ways to gain your postgraduate taught degree, as I've mentioned, through research or through a taught postgraduate programme, which on many websites is just down as PGT. I have the next slide. So in terms of the taught master's degree, Maggie mentioned that you can do this within 12 months to complete it. So in England and Wales, you can either take an MA, which is a Master of Arts, or an MSc, which is a Master of Science. And it follows the same kind of structure of some classroom-based work for 9 months of the study, and then you specialise in your research at the end, which is quite similar to the way it's set up in the US, but it's much more focused, and then that's why you have the ability to do it shorter as well. And then in terms of the recognition, you can transfer that back to the US, the same as an American degree, but you do save that time in doing it shorter. So in terms of the research master's degree programme, they can be known through a variety of names, including an MSc by research, an MRes, an MPhil, and then you would normally take a research project that the student would do in lieu of classes, so that you would do that with a tutor and you'd work closely on your subject area, and that usually takes about 12 to 18 months, but at some universities it could take up to 2 years. And most of the students that do these programs often then transfer onto a PhD, and it can, the work that you've done at that kind of MRes or MPhil or MSc can work towards your PhD research area as well. So in order to be accepted onto a research-based master's, you usually submit a research proposal and have a strong interest and a background in your subject area of choice. So if you're particularly interested in a subject-specific area, then you may have done something at undergraduate research, or maybe something that you're working in, and then you have this option to put in a proposal. Next slide, please, Maggie. So the types of research, we've touched upon this. So a Master of Philosophy by research, Master of Research, a Doctor in Philosophy, you go forward, and then another one that's becoming really popular at our university is the Doctor of Business Administration, and then you work towards the PhD or a doctorate in education. Next slide. What's really great about, there are many things that are great about studying a graduate degree in Wales, is that you can really focus on what you're interested in and something that you can go really deep into a subject. and focus on so many things, but also living in the country, and kind of making most of our, we've got some fantastic libraries as well, at all of the universities, and that's really good as well. But you could also do that at a distance. So there's, many advantages of both, coming to Wales, and there's so much to offer at all of the universities. Next slide. And one thing I think we always say, that it's just such a good investment to do that, and to do your postgraduate degree, whether you're applying for jobs, to get a promotion. I know in many countries doing a postgrad degree would then automatically rise you up to a promotion, or something that you've been really interested in terms of lifelong study, and it's getting together with like-minded individuals. Many of our campuses in Wales are have students from all over the world, and our academic staff are experts in their field, whether they're researchers or they're working in the field at the same time. I think the opportunity to work with the best is something that's been really beneficial to students. So it's a really stimulating new environment with staff from all over the UK, but from all over the world as well, I think, at all the universities. And so, yeah, you do have the independence to learn in one of the amazing libraries, but there's also the opportunity to work with the scholars that are the best in their fields as well. But one thing to mention is the scholarships. There's so many amazing scholarships as well. So do check out the Study in Wales website for the scholars. Okay.
And if you don't mind me butting in for that, that was one of the main reasons I came over here for grad school, was working one-on-one with these acclaimed people. You obviously get that opportunity in the US, but I just don't think it's to the same level. I mean, I called them by their first names. They invited me over to their house for dinner. We had Friday cocktail hour at the pub. It was a real relationship. And that's what developed into a PhD. Like, I never would have considered that, but it's because you have that access to such a great mind, to somebody who's very encouraging, that it builds that way. And then that worked in so many fields afterwards in terms of employability and networking. When I could say that I studied with PJC Field at Bangor University, obviously it's a very niche group of people that know that name in our theory and literature. But if you're in our theory and literature, you know that name. So that would get you, a wow factor moment. And being able to have that kind of relationship and that kind of access was very key. So sorry, chiming in there. Pass over to Pat now.
Thank you, Maggie, and hi everyone. The first thing I need to say before I start talking, it's about 5 p.m. in Wales here. I've got 2 small children that are just about to get home from school and from the childminder. So should you hear a mighty eruption of noise behind me at any point, it's kind of feeding time at the zoo, so they'll be getting home and eating any minute. So apologies in advance if for any noise behind me. I think really I just would like to build just a little bit upon this question of focus and specialism that both Maggie and Kath have talked about, really. And I think it's something that's really kind of really significant and really particular to master's level study in Wales and in the UK more broadly as well. So if we could just move the slide on, thank you. So yeah, I think, as Maggie said, really, the emphasis on study at undergraduate and at postgraduate or graduate level in the UK in general tends to be on that kind of focusing in and specialising a little bit more. And, so many programmes are available in Wales that allow that opportunity to focus and to concentrate on an area that really interests you. But, I talk to students in the US about that quite regularly, and they will say, well, what do you mean by focus? Are you talking about a kind of academic focus or something else? And, the reality is it could be any one of a number of things. So, all of our universities in Wales would have some very kind of niche academic programs. We've got some at Cardiff, and I'll come on to a list of them later, that are really very, very niche indeed, but that do allow, kind of as Maggie was saying there about the research side of things, do allow you to really develop that expertise in a specific area. But we also have, a whole range of programs with a strong professional focus as well. And, programs that are specifically aimed at students being able to qualify in professional terms to, to work in a particular career. Now, in some cases, those qualifications will transfer back for use in the US. In others, they may not, but they may still be useful as a way of developing a particular skill set. So we always advise students to, be careful and make sure they understand how a qualification will transfer back. But there are lots and lots of opportunities to get that kind of professional focus. Connected to that is things like industry links. So, a lot of our universities will offer programs that potentially have, an optional year working on a placement in industry. At Cardiff, just to pick one example, some of our computer science programs offer the option, you can take the full master's in a year, or you can take a 2-year program, which involves a year working with a company or an organization. And lots of our students will take that option to, to get that professional experience. And we also have things like conversion courses. And again, these will be available at a whole range of Welsh universities. Some of the examples we have at Cardiff are the computer science program I mentioned. If you're someone like me from an arts kind of a humanities or social sciences kind of background, and you want to kind of get into computing or computer science, we've got a conversion program in that area. Also psychology. So we recently launched an MSc in psychology that's aimed as a conversion program as well. So, students from a whole range of backgrounds are taking that program and developing their skills in clinical psychology. But, that applies to a whole range of other areas as well. I think one of the other questions, and I know those of us that kind of travel, or in the pre-COVID days, used to travel and hopefully will again soon, to talk about study in Wales, is, we're asked about entry requirements because, inevitably we're talking about very focused specialized programs, and students want to know, well, what kind of prerequisites do I need for those programs? And the answer to that is, yeah, for some programs, we do have quite sort of specific entry requirements and prerequisites, but actually there can be flexibility around those as well. I'm thinking of, say, we have a marketing master's program that needs students to show some expertise in marketing, but they don't need to have a marketing degree. They might just need to show that they've taken some classes and got some credit in that area, and that can usually be enough. So it does depend on how specialist the program is. If you want to come and take clinical dermatology, you are going to need to be a doctor and to have a couple of years of medical experience. But actually, if you want to come and do something like strategic marketing, a little bit of experience will be enough, along with a good academic background, to get you on the program, really. And the other thing is, yes, I'm talking about focus and specialization here, but we've got loads of more general programs as well. I've just finished, I've been doing a part-time master's for the last 2 years at Cardiff, and I've done a program in international relations. And yesterday I handed in my dissertation, which kind of had just taken over my life for months, which is why I'm sort of smiling so broadly today, because it's finally off my desk. But that's an example of the kind of more general program that we offer, and that many Welsh universities will offer. You can specialize within that as well. I personally quite like political theory, so I did concentrate a little bit more on those kind of political theory modules within my international relations masters, and you can do that, and that's an option on a number of programs as well.
I can't believe you can string 2 words together today. That's what
I know. Yeah, indeed.
I did also just want to say, for those year placements that Pat mentioned, those are, you don't pay tuition for that year. It's a year that's included in the course, and you are paid. They are paid placements, I would say, all of the time, aren't they? I don't think we have any unpaid placements. So that is a year that we just set you up with an industry placement, but there's no additional fee for you for that.
So yeah, moving on slightly. So looking at the types of learning, and I'm conscious Kath touched on a lot of this, so I won't go into sort of too much detail on this, but I think it's fair to say that, we have that kind of academic, those academic strengths and those academic types of programs, but we also have a lot of programs that introduce aspects of problem-based learning, and particularly we're seeing more of this in things like medical and health and life sciences type programs. So this is kind of a more kind of practical and hands-on way of learning, and will help you kind of approach real life problems with a bit more confidence. I think, in terms of how we teach on graduate programs in Wales, it will be that mixture of lectures, one-to-one sessions, tutorials, group work, all those sorts of areas. And, obviously use of labs, things like that. So, if you're taking our neuroimaging program, then you'll be able to use some of the facilities at Kubrick, which is it's our world leading brain imaging facility, for example. Virtual learning environments increasingly important, and I think I don't think any university anywhere in the UK knows exactly what things are going to look like next year. I think we're all hopeful that we'll be welcoming students back on campus for face-to-face study, and I'm increasingly confident that that will be possible. But I think blended learning is to some extent here to stay as well. So we'll be offering all those options as well. I'm sure, really, and personal tutors, which is kind of an obvious thing, but every student at a Welsh university, I'm sure, gets a personal tutor that they can go to with any questions, or if they need any support at all. Okay, so moving on, some of the things, I mentioned professional opportunities, talked about things like year in industry, years abroad. International students can access the opportunities to potentially study a year abroad. Less common on a master's program, more something that happens on an undergraduate degree, but there are options on some programs for that, especially professional placement years as well. Talked about work experience, and I think in that sense we mean kind of not quite formal placements, but just opportunities for students to get a bit more hands-on involvement, maybe on an unpaid or a voluntary basis in the world of work. And things like internships as well. Not all universities guarantee or offer internships on all programs, but we all have careers offices that can help students set up things like that within their master's program as well. So finally, I've just listed kind of some of the programs we offer at Cardiff, and I'm not going to talk about these in detail because, I'm here to talk about Wales, and, I know that all the other Welsh universities will have similar kind of niche and interesting specialist programs. But I've just kind of listed these as an example of some of the kind of specialist areas that you can study at Welsh universities. Some of them very cutting edge, really, things like data journalism, things like neuroimaging, translation studies, public health, which for obvious reasons we're seeing a huge increase in interest in as well. And some of these areas like conservation practice and care of collections as well, which I know are popular with students in the US. So all of the Welsh universities will have, a range of these kind of specialist programs as well. And so it's always worth, doing some research and working out kind of exactly what fits best for you, and all of the kind of more general master's programs that sit alongside those as well. So I'll finish up now, but yeah, thank you for listening, and yeah, happy to take any questions.
Brilliant, thank you. So yeah, I think just to sum up, I would say if you know what you want to study, this is something you should absolutely consider. The highlights for most American students is location, academics, cost, and entry requirements. So location, we've talked about, beautiful, easy to access, public transportation is fantastic. I lived here for 9 years before I had a car. You really don't need a car, and gas is really expensive over here, so try to avoid it if you can. Academics, stellar, transferable degrees, everything transfers back. The only thing, as we mentioned, that can be tricky are certifications. So we can help you kind of identify that, but we would put some research on you to make sure that that certification would be recognized back in your home state. I usually describe it as the same as if you're certified to be a teacher in California and you want to move to Oregon. You just have to see how that certification transfers. The degree transfers. Your master's in education is the same. So yeah, excellent reputation, lots of individual opportunity to explore your own passions, fall down that rabbit hole, really lead your own study with the support and structure of a master's program at a top institution. Cost ranges depending on the program and the university, but in general, cost is around $15,000 to $28,000 per year, obviously dependent on exchange rate, but generally the most expensive programs we offer are in the high 20s. All of our campuses have scholarships. Global Wales has scholarships. We work with FAFSA. We work with Rotary. We work with Fulbright. There are a lot of different opportunities for funding. You're also allowed to work part-time over here on your degree. So you can work 20 hours a week during term time and full-time in summer holidays or school breaks. So you really do have these opportunities to make this a really affordable option. And I'm happy to talk more at any point about funding, and we do have separate videos for that if people are interested in watching that at a later date. And entry requirements, I think one of the main things to point out is there's no GRE requirement for most of our programs. I can't think of any actually off the top of my head that do require the GRE. Some of the more pre-professional ones might require the medical or law, but generally there's no GRE requirement. We're really just looking at your GPA and your course of study prior to this. If you don't have a specific course of study that lines up with what you're looking to apply to, we would look heavily at that personal statement, the reference, and any work experience that you might have that could lead into this kind of study. So we just want to see that progression. How are you getting to this point? What preparation have you done? So that's usually a real attractive element to students. And last but not least is there's no application fee. So if you do have a student that is considering this, we're not asking for $100 per application. We're just asking for the application. So throw your hat in the ring. If you like the program and the location, give yourself the opportunity. And then once accepted, we'll help you with everything else. In terms of next steps, and just for wrapping this up, if you do have any questions, I'll put links in the chat here, and I'll also put them in the captions of the YouTube video. So if anybody has any questions, you can certainly reach out to me. I consider myself the matchmaker. If you want to go to any of these Welsh universities, you can always contact me first and say, I want to study this subject. Who do I go to? And I can put you in touch with the right person at the right university. Each university has a champion representing that country. So you would talk specifically to Pat or Kath or any of our other reps from those countries who would be able to look at your application, look at your transcript, and really feed back to you about what they're looking for and frankly, what your chances are of being admitted. They'd be able to feed into you quite early if you're a junior or senior in college, what they would need to see from you on the application to be successful in that process. So we're all about transparency, trying to help you on the process and making your application as strong as it can be by the time it gets to us. So I'll wrap up there. Thank you very much for coming. I will stick around for questions if you do have any, but in terms of the recording, I'll wrap it up here. So thanks for coming along, and do check out the links below if you have any further questions. But thanks, Jill.